invite you to speak. Obviously, the usual way of raising your right hand function, and I'll take those for any questions or comments that you wish to make. There is always a risk, of course, that we'll run into some technical problems, and I ask for your patience on that particular matter. Should this occur, I will decide and adjourn the meeting while the fault is addressed and the public broadcast is paused. If it's not possible to address the fault, I will abandon the meet until such times as it can be reconvened. Can I remind members, as you might say, about that the meeting today is a virtual meeting and will be recorded on the council's website, and the minutes will be signed in due course when we get back to Shire Hall at some point. Could I therefore begin the meeting by asking members to confirm that they are present here? So I'll call you out one by one in alphabetical order, and I'll start with Councillor Batcher.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Connor.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Fuller.
Present.
Councillor Hartford.
Present.
Councillor Kavanagh.
Present. Yeah.
Councillor King.
Present.
Councillor Manning.
Present.
Councillor Taylor.
Present.
And myself, I am present, as you might gather. Can we
Chairman, Chairman, as am I.
Did I miss you off? Councillor yes. Councillor Howell, yes, you are after.
Thank you, Chairman. That's very kind of you. Yes, I'm also present, Chairman.
Apologies for that, Councillor Howell. Okay. Can we then move on to item 1, which is apologies and absentees and declarations of interests. So
no apologies, Chair.
Okay. Are there any declaration of interest? I see no hands raised. If there is something when you get to that particular point, please indicate. Can we move then to item 2, which is minutes of the last meeting, which is the meeting of the 15th of September. Can I propose those? Councillor Manning.
Just a couple of quick short points, Chair. On 29, the mention of the one dot network was the action there I was actually hoping was that it would be emailed out to all elected members of the council, possibly with some sort of office of support to how to use it. And on point 30, I'd understood the discussion we had around this was this is the business about adding whether we could add a new proposal into tranche 2 at this stage. I'd understood that we were using this BO 1040 proposal as a sort of test about whether the DFT would accept new proposals to be added in. Clearly, it failed according to the notes as due to it wasn't applicable. So I'm not quite clear that we've yet answered the question about whether we can still add things into tranche 2 if they were applicable. So I'd appreciate I can easily suggest one that is applicable or some way that we follow that up.
Can I suggest, Ian, that we ask Graham Hughes is on this meeting and Richard Lumley's on this meeting. Can I ask them perhaps to take that away and have a look at what you're saying?
That's
please?
Fine, Chair.
Okay, because it has implications across the whole of the county as to what you're suggesting. So, and make that as an action point, and they can come back, I think, as soon as possible. Okay, thank you, Ian. Simon King, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a couple of factual corrections on the item on the emergency cycling funding, and I don't have a particular page number because I don't have page numbers, unfortunately, but it's the section headed Councillor King raised issues.
Okay. Can I ask Dan perhaps to also take that away, I think, and seek some clarification, because obviously I think it was the minutes were done by Rob Sanderson, and it may be that Dan needs to sort of look at his notes, Simon. I think perhaps that's the sensible way forward, if you agree.
Well, I think, Mr. Chairman, there are basically two very simple factual corrections, and one is really simple. Lynn Road is spelt with an E, and it has no E.
Okay, noted.
And secondly, 2 the word TO2 is capitalized, and it shouldn't be. It should be just an ordinary TO. And finally, it's to create. And the word create is incorrect because there already is a map. So it's to update a revised cycling map for Wisbech rather than to create a revised new cycling plan for Wisbech. So those are the simple factual ones. And the final thing, Mr. Chairman, if I may, because I would like this recorded in the minutes for today, is that we did agree that we would include as an agenda item or as a future agenda item or as an action a look for funding to do that updating. And there's no mention of that on the action plan or the agenda plan.
Okay. Noted. I think we'll ask, that should be an action from Dan Snowden, to actually look at those corrections, if you might say, in spelling and the like, and also about the action plan, Simon. So I will ask Dan to pick that particular point up and come back to you with what is being proposed. Okay.
That's very kind of you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Ian, you've got your hand up still. Ian Manning, sorry. Assuming you don't want to speak again. And thank you. Right. There is no other raised hand at the moment. So I'm going to say, with those alterations, that based on those comments from members, are you happy to approve those minutes?
Yes,
giving
Chairman.
a bit of time here to raise any hands. I see no hands raised, so I take that as unanimous that the minutes are taken as listed with those changes. Can we move on to the next item, which is item 3, minutes and the action log? Dan, do you want to just brief us on anything of significance, please?
Yeah, there was a further update that was circulated yesterday to the committee regarding action 146 and part A of number 311. And it's been agreed to bring a report to December's committee recommending the creation of a member working group to review the LHI process for 2022-2023. And the report will include draft terms of reference for the working group, and it will focus on 4 specific items: parish financial contribution level, equity of number of applications permitted, simplifying the scoring process, and the delivery of MVAS.
Okay. Members, are there any other points you wish to raise on the action log?
Just to repeat, Mr. Chairman, that I did volunteer to be a member of that working group, and Dan did say he would take that away and bring it back in December. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's a matter for December's meeting when we get to that particular point, Simon. But thank you for your.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy for that. And
thank you for volunteering.
It's a subject close to my heart and to the heart of my parishes as well. Can I just mention again that I would like to see this funding for a map on the action log or on the agenda plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Got no other body wishing to speak on the action plan. Can therefore take that as read, as you might say. If we can move on to item 4, which is petitions and public questions. This must be a first. We have none, so I can move on, I think, to the next item, which is actually item 5, Ringforth Path. And that is on page 3. And I think it is Stuart that is going to introduce this, and then David Jenkins wishes to speak. So could you please introduce the report, please?
Yeah. Okay. Morning, everybody. So yes, Ringforth Path is a long-standing project that's been around, and it's to establish a link from the A14 interchange into the Orchard Park development just to the north of Cambridge. In 2014, there was a public consultation, and there was an agreement to develop both ramp and step options for the connection. And following that, in 2015, E&E committee gave the approval to develop a ramp option, along with the possibility of providing steps as well. At that time, the approval from committee indicated that should there be extensive work required on the embankment there, or that there's a risk of failure, or that costs for provision of the ramp, it may be that the step option becomes the only option available to us to deliver. So we've worked through that, and the cost of constructing a ramp option in the area now could well be in the region of 800k, as detailed in the report. So the current budget that we've got available is 255,000, and so at the moment, with the current budget that we've got available, the ramp option cannot be delivered. If the current situation continues, there's people in the area, they're just creating their own walkway down the embankment, which provides safety issues for people, especially when we come to this time of year. People are slipping and sliding down the bank. So we've got the step option has been developed, and we've looked at various construction types for the steps. We've looked at concrete, wood, metal steps, and they all come in not too far cost-wise from each other. But the favoured option of our CCC structures team from a maintenance point of view is a concrete step option. The steps would incorporate a channel for bikes to be pushed up and down the steps, and the construction of the steps themselves would be in a relatively small area, so the sort of impact on the local area, the trees, habitats of wildlife and whatever, the impact would be a lot less than building a ramp. With regards to the way forward to the project, we've had responses from various people, as detailed in the report, from people like Camp Cycle, Noel Kavanagh, who's on the meeting today, and also Cambridge Local Access Forum. All of these people have stated that they'd like to see the ramp option still developed. The provision of just the steps is not fully inclusive to all people. And so, yeah, so we've also had replies from Orchard Park Community Council and David Jenkins, who's going to speak up next. These two parties are very keen to get something established in the area, because if we continue with the current situation, yeah, the liability of that embankment is on Cambridgeshire County Council, and yeah, so an accident could happen basically. So what we're asking from the committee today is, based on this report and the responses that we had, is that you give your support to proceed with the detailed design of the steps only option, and to note that if future funding becomes available, then the ramp option could be pursued as well. So that is it for now.
Yeah. Thank you, Stuart. Okay, I'm going to invite now the local councillor, David Jenkins, to speak. So, David, you have your 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Chair. As Stuart says, this is indeed a long-standing project, and I've got photographs of it going back to July 2012, and it did come to, it seems to have gone to Cabinet that year, and it's come to this committee previously. At times when I was on the committee, I can remember talking about it. Orchard Park is a bit of an island community. It's cut off from other parts of Cambridge and Cambridgeshire by the A14, the guided bus, King's Hedges Road, etc. And it does need all the linkages that it can get to enable its residents to have access to the facilities in other communities. This proposal gives it great advantage to walkers and people who are able to climb the bank at the moment, and lots of them do it because they use it to access the school, the doctor's surgery, and shops up in Histon and Impington. I would take issue with some of the analysis, which I regard as a bit of a red herring, because it compares journey lengths. But it always starts those journeys at the foot of the steps, or the foot of the path. And as we know, most journeys will take place from throughout the community. So the relative impact on a cycle journey length is relatively minor. The steps, as Stuart has said, do nothing for cyclists or users of disability scooters, but to my mind, they are perfectly well served by the alternative route, which is to go up the side of the B1049, which is a nice smooth route to the top of the roundabout again. So what is proposed gives massive advantage to pedestrians and fit walkers and marginal disadvantage to the other people. I therefore strongly support recommendations A and B, and I'm less concerned about recommendation C.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Thank you for your input. Members, is there any matters of clarification you need from the local member? Simon King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, David, I just wanted to ask you where you got that library.
I beg your pardon?
Where you got that wonderful library.
Yes, we have a library. Did I not mention it? I should have done so.
It's absolutely splendid, David. I'm very envious.
Well, we've always had a library.
No, it's the one in it's that's okay, David. It's the picture behind you.
Oh, that one there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. It's not part of the conversation, David. So you don't need to have to answer it. Okay. I'm going to go to Noel Kavanagh. Okay. Thank you, Simon, for your input. I think.
Thank you,
Noel.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, just a quick question, David, as local member. Have you had any representation from any disability groups locally? You know, wheelchair users, because clearly people in wheelchairs would, I imagine, prefer a ramp, and also young families with prams would prefer a ramp. I'm just wondering if anyone has approached you locally.
No, nobody has approached me, but I would encourage you to look at the map, because there's a perfectly easy, accessible ramp-like route already up to the roundabout. And
Okay.
as I pointed out when I spoke before, most people don't start at the foot of the steps. They start throughout the community, or even across the road in King's Meadow. And for them, the extra length they're going to have to go down to get up to the top of the B1049 is really very small. There's a perfectly good alternative for these people, Noel.
Okay. Councillor Howe. Mark.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to ask Councillor Jenkins a quick question. Are you saying, Councillor Jenkins, that we should now put the ramp to one side completely, or do you still think that there's something we should be looking for the distant future? What is your opinion on that, please?
Well, I worded my comments deliberately. I don't want to be against a ramp, simply because it does give some small advantage to other people. But at the same time, you've got to look at the fact that the ramp will result in the destruction of quite a significant amount of vegetation and a corridor for wildlife access across the top of Orchard Park. So I'm not enthusiastic about it, but I'm not going to vote. I wouldn't, if I were you, vote against it, but it shouldn't be high on the list of priorities for many.
Thank you, Councillor Jenkins. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I've got no other. So members now, thank you, Councillor Jenkins, for your input. It's now open for debate. So I'm now looking for members who wish to speak. We'll start with Ian Manning, please.
Thanks, Chair. Just briefly, I just wanted to thank officers for doing the QIA, and I do want us to all just something I've sort of talked about the last committee, to remember that not all disabilities are the same, and there are disabilities that, whilst a ramp would be better for, there are many people with disabilities and impairments where a ramp wouldn't actually be better and step access is better. So, you know, support the recommendations, but I do think we should be slightly more wide in when we do our EQAs, and understanding how different types of disability can be both impacted and benefited by changes.
Okay, Councillor, I'm going to pick up all the questions first and then go back to the officer for any input. Councillor Hartford. Linda.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to say that I'm going to support this. As a member for a division that had local support for something and was overridden, I think it's time that we do listen when we consult our local people. We hear the local member saying that this will provide benefits. I absolutely take on board that it doesn't benefit everybody, but as we've heard from the local member, there is an alternative route, and I think it's time to listen both to the local member and to the local people who, when consulted, have said the steps are fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Simon King, please. Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was really going to say what Linda has just said, so I won't go over it again, but I do support the recommendations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Noel Kavanagh, Noel?
Yeah, thanks. Actually, one very detailed question I have is, there's £20,000 being given to or owed to Highways England. You know, in the budget there, Highways England are going to get 20k. I was just wondering what that is for. Yeah, like David, I'm very familiar with this project. I think it goes back to the time when I started being a member of the council. I remember Mike Davis, I think, introducing this, and I am actually very pleased we've got this far, and that there are at least going to be the steps there, because I do pass by here occasionally, and yeah, it's desperately needed. I'd be interested to know after this meeting what will the schedule be for the actual building of the steps, and I obviously support it because it will be of great benefit to the community. And then there is, on the report, as we see, section C there, there's the statement that finance will be looked for a ramp at some future time. So yeah, it's a good project and much needed. Shame it's not exactly what everyone wants, but I think the steps are a good compromise. Although overall it looks like a very expensive group of steps. You know, 800,000. 800,000.
No, 255. No, for steps.
Sorry, 255. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. The 80 is for the ramp. Yeah, the ramp is the 800. Okay.
Seems
just
to be
clear.
quite a lot of money, and yeah, so fine. Thanks.
Okay. Fine. Stuart, I think there's very little to comment upon. I think the question, from Noel Kavanagh is most probably the most significant. Can you please address any of those comments, please?
Yeah, so the first comment from Noel was about the 20,000 that was provided to the Highways England. I believe at the time this was for some exploratory work and survey work that Highways England did. I can clarify on that further if Noel requires that. That was undertaken way before I got involved in the project, but I can have a look into that. The ramp option, obviously there's a decision going to be made on that, option C, by the committee in a short while, whether we do pursue the money for option C. And then the cost of the steps themselves, Noel, we work in partnership with Skanska, with the Highway Services contract, and they do go out to suppliers and competitively quote for these provision of this work. So we will get value for money as we work through the project. And the final point you said was about the programme for delivery of the steps. Included in the report for committee was that if we did get approval today, we can then go forward into detailed design and then look at procurement over the winter, and then start to look at mobilisation and construction early 2021. And construction would take 16 weeks, the provision for that, the mobilisation and construction. So we're looking hopefully to get the work completed by May next year.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. Just for clarification, Noel, the Highways England, one of the issues I visited this site, I think, in 2011. And one of the issues actually is because it's very steep and because an embankment, it was the integrity of the embankment if you do anything. Okay, that's where the Highways England money came in. And there was some discussion about the embankment and its steepness and its viability in respect of supporting what is a major highway, if that helps, Noel. Okay. I was aware of all those conversations way back. I think we've moved on a bit since then. Members, I've got no other speakers. We've got a recommendation to the committee, which is on your papers of A, B, and C. That's okay on page 3. I'm looking to see if there's any dissension from that. Anybody wishing to make any? I see no hands raised, so I'm going to take that as unanimous, please. That recommendation A, B, and C are supported unanimously by the committee. Thank you. Thank you, Stuart. Can we move on, please, members, now to the next item on the agenda, which is item 6, England's Economic Heartlands Draft Transport Strategy. And I think that is going to be, excuse me, Jeremy Smith is going to introduce that.
Thank you, Chair. The paper in front of you sets out the consultation by England's Economic Heartland on their draft transport strategy and also on their proposal for setting up a statutory subnational transport body. Dealing with the second first, it's worth noting that government has written to both the Heartland and Transport for the South East, indicating that they are not minded to set up further statutory subnational transport bodies. So the consultation, while it is still ongoing, is unlikely to lead in a proposal that does lead to a statutory body, as the government don't appear to be interested at this point in time. Turning to the transport strategy, I think in summary, it seems to be a well put together document that relatively briefly sets out transport policies that are pretty much in alliance with policy set out by the combined authority, just at a slightly higher level. They generally support the infrastructure that is being brought forward by the combined authority and support regional infrastructure that both the combined authority and the county council is supportive of. And like our local councils and the combined authority, it has a very strong emphasis on carbon emissions and climate change. There isn't too much to say. The document is in front of you, or rather the document has been presented and you'll have the opportunity to read. We suggest sending in a response that is broadly supportive and suggesting a couple of changes in regards to infrastructure that's particularly relevant to us in the east of the Heartland area on the West Anglia main line, but basically we would suggest going back and endorsing the strategy. While we have reflected, it will be the combined authority who need to take a view on the appropriateness or not of a statutory or subnational transport body. That part of the conversation appears to be taken out of their hands now, so it's perhaps less relevant. But basically, the recommendation is that we endorse the strategy and go back to the Heartland with the appended response. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got no speakers on this, members, so it is matter now for some discussion and debate. So I'm looking for hands. I'll start. First hand I see is Simon King. So Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'm happy with the Appendix B, which we're being asked to support. The only thing I would like added to it, please, is a mention of the reopening of the March to Wisbech rail line. I'm being a bit parochial here, but it is important for the prosperity of Cambridgeshire as a whole, because the reopening of that line will have a dramatic effect also upon the south of the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Ian Manning, I'll come back to you, Jeremy, when everybody's had the opportunity to speak. Ian Manning, and then it's Henry, and then I'll come back to you, Jeremy.
Thanks, Chair. So obviously what Jeremy said about the government indicating they're not supporting necessarily going to support the creation of a statutory STB just slightly taint what I'm about to say. But I think my comments were going to be around the fact that I only saw this paper when it was published, I should add. So we've had a limited amount of time to sort of discuss. I do question the need for yet another statutory transport body in local government. I can see that we need to have some more joined up approach between the different regions. But I do think back to when the CPCA was created and the warnings that my group in particular made about how it was devolution that sent powers upwards and that there was less democratic accountability because you were making the distance between the citizen and the decision had more layers in between it. Could the officers perhaps clarify, because I read the legislation last night, and it although it makes clear that you can't compel the relevant authorities to do stuff, it does read as if only the mayor can be a member of his governance body. So it's just a point of clarification for the officers there. The draft strategy, which is what was being asked to complement, I think we should complement it and congratulate it for putting decarbonisation front and centre. That's a very marked contrast with Transport East, which is mentioned in our response, which doesn't have that same emphasis. I also know it retains the power in the Act to possibly taking over rail franchising. So perhaps Mayor Palmer will take note of that and kind of get on with that with more rapidity than he's been done recently. So I can't oppose this because I can see there's a need for more coordination, having set up those concerns. But I do think I would make some additional comments in terms of the response we're putting forward. I think the paragraph about meaningful delegation of powers should be much firmer. I'd change the last sentence to say without delegation of powers, there's no point in an STB. We should be only considering linking with another STB if they have a seemingly strong commitment to decarbonisation, and I think that rules out the one that's mentioned in the response. I think that in terms of our Cambridgeshire's context, I think an STB would only work if it was actually compelled to consult with the district level. The legislation only mentions unitary districts, so it would wipe out any compelled consultation with lower level, and I think that's very important in the Cambridgeshire context. Electrification of East West Rail isn't mentioned, and that should be part of the strategy. And I also, the biodiversity isn't mentioned anywhere in that strategy. So I think I would want the county to respond to say something around saying that there should be something in the strategy around maintaining and increasing biodiversity. Yeah, that's my points, Chair. If I could get some clarification on that point about the mayor, thanks.
Okay, we'll let Henry and Noel come in and ask Jeremy to come back. Okay, Henry.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I mean, my questions were mainly going to be around the subgroup. So given the fact that Jeremy in his introduction said that it's unlikely that will be a part of this going forward, I suppose my sort of questions have been eradicated. But if I could just ask for, I suppose, a gauge on how likely Jeremy suspects that the subgroup will be removed, would be appreciated. And also just to echo Councillor Manning's points about the fact that it would have been nicer to see the document in a bit further in advance than today, because I appreciate that the deadline is very soon. So just to make those comments and that question for Jeremy. Thank you.
Thank you. Noel Kavanagh.
Actually, yeah, some of the points I was going to make have already been made, but I'm just looking at the penultimate paragraph. I'm pleased to see that the links to the eastern counties to the east of Cambridgeshire have been emphasised there. Otherwise, I think, with the main weight emphasis on the west, it could have been sort of labelled as a half heartland proposal. That's all.
Okay, Noel. Okay, Ian and Henry and Noel, could you just take your thank you. Okay, take your hand down, as they say. Jeremy, I'll ask you to respond to some of those questions, and I'll make a few comments myself towards the end. Okay, thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah, March to Wisbech. If members are happy with that, I don't see any issue with mentioning it. East West Rail electrification, likewise. Biodiversity, yes, again, likewise, if members are happy that we need to mention it, then I'm very happy to mention it. The Transport Eats context on climate change, I think, is a point well made, and obviously we do need to look in both directions as Cambridgeshire, and we need to be trying to make sure that our partners in the East are taking it as seriously as we are. In terms of the subnational transport body, I think at the current time, it is very unlikely that we will see a statutory body, and therefore the meaningful delegation of powers downwards, which is really where the value would be, probably isn't likely at this point, or at least not on a statutory basis. So I think, yeah, that doesn't seem likely at the moment. I do take the point in, on firmness of that position. And again, if members are happy, we can boost up that. Although, yeah, given the government position, it seems that it probably isn't going to be, particularly relevant to anything at this point.
Okay, just a few comments from me, members, just to make you aware. I have certainly seen this document more than once. This group, which goes from Swindon through Oxfordshire, Buckinghamshire, Central Bedford Borough, South Cambs, etc. The chairman of the group is Mayor Dave. That's Bedford, okay, just for clarity, okay, and he does chair the meetings, and certainly we have been actively engaged with them across the piece on this particular strategy. I certainly was invited to go to Norwich with Suffolk and Norfolk in extending what I call East-West Rail towards the towards that answers really Noel's point, I think, about it, where it's half a strategy, as you might say. So we do have had some engagement with Norfolk and Suffolk, particularly on rail, and perhaps that will come in the future. So that's a little bit of the background. It is quite detailed, and it is quite a revolutionary document in respect of climate change and environmental issues. I don't think personally that it would get much traction in central government at the moment, which is what Jeremy has said. I think they're not in favour of having more sub-regional strategies for transport bodies, etc. So that's really just for your information, members, and for the minutes as well. I've got nobody else wishing to speak. We've got a recommendation with those comments which have been made, and I can pick them up because it is
Mr.
delegated.
Chairman, I'm sorry to disturb you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Mann has just raised his hand.
Oh, okay, fine. Councillor Manning, sorry.
Chair, where I was coming into this meeting was that I was going to abstain. Obviously, the comments I've made have been received by Jeremy Smith, and he's mentioned, and I've not seen any sort of dissent with those. But I mean, as much as it matters, in order to vote for, I really would want to be able to see what I'm voting for before it gets sent off. So if there's a way we can do that, either by amending the delegation to include lead members or by confirming that those comments will be included, I could vote for it. Otherwise, I feel I have to abstain.
Okay, well, that's your view, Ian. The delegation, I think, is to myself in conjunction with the Vice Chairman and the Executive Director. You've heard the comments. I'm quite happy to take those away and work with Jeremy on those amendments myself with the Executive Director. I don't think they are very contentious, but you're quite entitled, if you like, to vote against it. I think the recommendation is quite adequate at this moment in time.
It is, Chairman.
So with that, then I think we will go to a vote. Then I think it's beholden upon me to call out the names and ask you how you wish to vote on the recommendations as laid out on the papers. That's A and B. That's on page 23. So I'll read out your names as to how you wish to vote for, against, or abstain. So Councillor Batchelor.
I'll abstain, please, Chair.
Councillor Connor.
For.
Councillor Fuller.
For.
Councillor Hartford.
For.
Councillor Howell.
For.
Councillor Kavanagh.
For.
Councillor King.
For.
Councillor Manning.
Abstain, Chair.
Councillor Taylor. Councillor Taylor.
Chairman, I think Councillor Chamberlain left the room a little while ago. I didn't see a return.
No,
Okay.
she's there, Chair.
She's back. No,
muted.
I do apologise. Councillor Taylor's
She's on
back.
mute.
It's on mute.
Councillor Taylor, your vote is required, please.
I'm so sorry, Councillor Taylor. You're on mute. Ah, you're off mute.
Yeah, you had me on mute. I unmuted myself several times. I wish to abstain.
Okay, and myself in favour. Can I ask, therefore, Dan, please to tell us the result of the vote, please?
7 votes in favour, Chair, and 3 abstentions. The motion's carried.
Okay, thank you, members. If we can now move on to item 8.
Chairman.
So I think, is it going to be Graham Hughes to introduce this item, please, to start with?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'll just very briefly introduce this item. So, members, this is the business planning proposals for 2021 to 26 overview. So, just a sort of early view of where we are heading for the business plan for next year. I'll really point members just to the later part of the report, actually, because the earlier sections are contains general information that's available to all of the committees, just setting down the general council financial position. Section 4 and Section 5 are the bits that are particularly relevant to this committee. So Section 4 sets down just the context to the services provided within place and economy that relate to this committee. And then Section 5 contains just a series, starting in paragraph 5.2, just a series of proposals that officers are putting forward to members as suggestions for consideration to be part of the business plan for the period. Subject to views today from the committee, and any particular comments that members make, officers will then go away and for the appropriate proposals work up greater detail and prepare business cases, and then that will return to the December cycle. 1st of December is the next, or is the December meeting of this committee, where those proposals would have been worked up in more detail with the actual savings that can be made and any implications. So, Chairman, that's really the content of the report, and between myself and Richard Lumley, because most of the proposals actually sit within the highways area, can answer any questions that members have. And I believe that Tamar may be on the call as well. She was on the call, but certainly between Richard and myself, we can deal with any questions that members have about the specifics. So thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, members, I was going to split the discussion into 2 parts, bearing in mind part 1 would be the overall, which is going to all committees, which is listed in paragraphs 1, 2, 3, and then move on to the specific ones for 4. So what I would propose is, have you any comments you wish to make at this moment in time on the paragraphs, what I call universal to all committees? So I'm going to pick that one up first, which is in the papers. So any comments that you wish to make at this moment in time on those particular, before we move on to our specific points for this committee?
Councillor Manning, I believe, wants to speak, Chairman.
Okay.
Could I just say that there was a revised report which is on the additional meeting documents, because the actual corporate bit was actually revised after the initial papers went out.
Sorry, David, you're...
Yeah.
Can you please clarify that, please, for members?
The additional meeting, there's a revised business planning proposals under the additional meeting documents. So the corporate section did actually get revised after the initial paper went out.
I'm on the County Council website looking at it at the moment, and I'm trying to find that amendment.
Down the bottom of the page.
It's right to the bottom, yeah. So it's the first paper after the additional meeting documents.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, could the officer just talk us through the changes, because I didn't pick up on that either.
Right. Okay. I don't actually have the detail on the actual changes, but I think the thing is, because I think the thing is, some of this is based on the scenarios around like the COVID-19, and I think the feeling that the revision has taken account of the fact that the virus isn't getting any better. So I'd say it probably takes a little bit more gloomy picture on what the initial paper took. In the section 3, it gives a kind of funding gap of the whole county council of just under 33 million, but it's kind of like more or less talking about that's kind of on the best scenario, where it's kind of like more or less indicating that we probably need to be looking at £40 million gap. So that is the main change, really.
So, David, if I'm hearing you right, what the amendment is really about the current climate that we're living through, and the prospects of what might happen in next month and next month as we go towards setting the council tax in December. Am I?
Yeah, that most definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because obviously we're losing income. We're also getting like more kind of costs.
And obviously, members, we will see that at other committees, and we will obviously see that in December as we go forward to the main committee. I'm not seeing any hands that wish to discuss that particular point, so it seems as though...
Mr. Chairman, so sorry, Mr. Chairman, Councillor Manning has indicated for a while that he wishes to speak.
So you are. Okay, sorry. Ian?
Just a brief question, Chair. Maybe that this needs to be followed up with a different committee, but the two CSIT costs at the bottom of the table on page 7, continued remote working and new connections. Could we just have a brief what those are, and B, is that broken down by department? Because I would have thought quite a lot of our place economy work is remote anyway, so it might affect us less.
Okay. We will take that away as an action, I think, Ian, actually, but particularly as it's going to come back. I mean, this is our first sight of it, okay, and we'll see other sites of it, and other committees will see sight of it as well.
That's fine,
so I think take that away as an action, and we can pick that up. Okay, so with no other indication to speak, I'm going to move on to what I call 4 and 5, and I invite members for any observations or comments that they wish to make at this early stage. Bearing in mind we are at an early stage. Councillor Batchelor, you're first. Henry.
Thank you, Chairman. 2 points I had questions on. The first is on the winter gritting routes. So I'm just going to find the number for ease, which is 5.2, I believe.
Correct.
And one
Correct.
yeah, that's right. One of the questions about the winter gritting routes was potentially reducing it. I just wanted a bit more clarity on that if possible, because I do have a bit of trepidation about potentially agreeing to something along those lines. As someone who represents a relatively rural area, majority of the roads in my area would be classed as secondary. So I know from, again, a parochial point of view, that would inconvenience a lot of my constituents. And secondly, in the same section, the removal of the VAS signs. I mean, unless I'm reading this wrong, it doesn't seem that there would be much of a saving, to be honest, by doing this. So I just wondered if I've read that wrong, and could we have a bit of clarity on that section as well, please?
Okay, Henry, we'll pick up some other questions, I think, and then I'll ask either Richard Lumley or Graham Hughes to come back to us. Noel Kavanagh.
Yeah, actually, the point I was going to make was under 5.2, Henry's alluded to it, the removal of the old VAS signs. In the narrative, it says there'll be savings long term on officer time, but those of us who've had NVAS signs put in, under LHI and have kept closely involved in their effects and their operation, will be aware that the batteries actually fade, usually after a fortnight. I think it's around about a fortnight they last, and that means an officer has to go out and change the batteries, which is quite a lot of use of time. There's also a lot of use of time of councillors and residents who sort of send an email saying the battery's faded and so on. They are great devices. They do influence the speed of motorists, but I would just like to question the saving of officer time long term. Yes, if you're getting rid of the old electrical ones, you've got a clear saving there, but I'm just saying the battery operated ones do take up a lot of officer time to change them around. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Noel. I think that's winter gritting and the signs ×2. Ian Manning.
Thanks, Chair. So just on 5.3, what is a low priority school site? I'm a bit concerned about that because I suspect it isn't low priority for the school involved. So I was wondering if we can have an explanation of that. And in 5.2, the digitisation of drainage data, sort of instinctively something I support, but I did look up the tool that was mentioned in the paper. It does seem to be an highways asset management tool. And we are at the moment we're supposed to be doing a procurement process for a replacement for the current asset management system. So how do those two interact? I wouldn't want us to see us buying 2 asset management systems for different bits of highways.
Okay. I think I've got 2 more speakers, then I think I'll invite the officers to come back to pick up the points. Next one is Linda Hartford. Linda.
Thank you very much. So my point is on the last one that was mentioned by Councillor Manning at 5.2, the digitisation of drainage data. I really do think that looking at something different to what we've got currently is a very good thing to do. The one thing I would like to make sure, though, is that anything that we do in the future, we do have a really good monitoring system on, because I do think that currently it's not sufficiently closely measured how successful what we're doing is. And for me, what gets measured gets done, and I'd like to make sure that that monitoring is a really strong facet of whatever we switch over to. Thank you.
Okay. Last speaker at the moment is Amanda Taylor. Amanda.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, indeed.
Brilliant. Thank you. Yes, some of the other speakers have asked questions about a few of the things I was going to ask about inevitably, but first was about the increased maintenance budget for safety related measures. That sounds a great idea, and it's one of the things that I'm contacted about all the time. Would we be looking at the LHI budgets in terms of delivering extra budget for safety related measures, or will it be going through some of the route? Second question was, I'd also be interested in how you prioritise the school crossing patrol sites, and thirdly, about the winter gritting routes being reduced. My concern would be that if you're talking about primary routes only, then that rather suggests you're looking at road routes, and I think it's really important that walking and cycling routes are safe to walk on as well, particularly as we're putting huge sums of money into making it easier to walk and cycle. It would be perverse if those routes then weren't safe to walk and cycle on when we get snowy weather.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Amanda. I think between Graham and Richard Lumley, I think we've got some questions which are mostly around 3.2, if you deal with 3.2 first, which is the digitalisation of the drainage data. Okay, the signs, appreciate the fact that a lot of them did come through local highways initiatives, of course, but through local communities, and the winter gritting. So Graham or Richard.
Yeah. Chairman, thank you. Yeah, and members, I will let Richard, because there are, as you say, Chairman, a series of detailed questions there. Richard is, I think, better able to address these. Could I just clarify for members, I suppose, just the structure, because there's a section 5.2 and a section 5.3. So 5.2 are the things that I think we would recommend to you and can be done. 5.3 are, just to be clear, are sort of ideas, particularly given what David Parcell said, depending on the overall financial position of the savings that are needed, further ideas that could be considered. At this stage, we're not recommending those necessarily as officers, but we're saying that if members felt we needed to go further, we could look at those. I think just in terms of that batch of ideas, though, it is less clear, as I think Richard will outline in terms of some of the specific questions raised, less clear how we would deliver those and what savings could be made. So they are very much more sort of speculative thoughts. So Richard, can you answer the specific questions as the chairman has asked on those proposals?
Yes, thank you, Graham. Thank you, Chairman. So I'll start with the items that are in 5.2, which are the 3 items that we are sort of suggesting as doable and certainly could be taken forward. So the removal of the VAS signs. This is purely looking at those that were originally hardwired in. So as members will know, certainly through the LHI process, they're now all battery operated, and so therefore we don't have that sort of ongoing maintenance liability that we would have with wired in systems. I certainly take on board Councillor Kavanagh's point around the actual quantification of officer time being saved, and that's something that I will have to take away and look at further. The team are currently sort of investigating and pulling together the proper business case for it. So in due course, I will have more information around the type of saving that could be expected for that. In terms of the drainage, Councillor Manning is correct. It is essentially an asset management system, but it differs from certainly what we've got currently in the sense that it is focused solely on the mapping of our existing drainage network, and therefore identifying the state of that network and utilising that information to develop a more sustainable and coherent plan for how we go about cleaning those drains. I think at the moment, the procurement of the overarching asset management system is still very much in the, I suppose, the design phase, and as a service we're feeding back into IT the sorts of things that we require that system to do. So one of those will be the management of our drainage asset as well. So it's too early to say whether that procurement process is going to enable that, but quite rightly, we would only look to get one system that does both. And if we end up having to get a separate system because the first one doesn't do the drainage, equally we need to make sure that those 2 systems are compatible and work with each other. So as I said, there's still more work to do on it, but certainly from a officer perspective and in terms of our management of the drainage network, it is viewed very positively, and I think certainly given the experiences I'm sure all members have faced with their constituents, it is something that would be a real plus for Cambridgeshire. And equally, just touching on Councillor Harford's point around the monitoring, yes, we need to make sure that whatever we put in place, that we are monitoring it suitably to make sure that we then focus our resources accordingly for that. But then just move on to the second list, which is the sort of areas.
Richard, can I just stop you? I think it'd be useful to pick up on the winter gritting and the weather stations, please. I think that might help Henry, by the way, okay, because we will have extra facilities, if you like, in weather stations. So perhaps explain that a little bit more, please, to members.
Yeah, no problem, Chairman. So you'll see that the winter's sort of been split into 2 options. The one in the top list is around maintaining the current routes that we grit, however, doing it on a more localised basis. So currently we have 3 weather domains, and depending on the temperature in those weather domains will determine whether we go out. So for instance, if we go out in the north of the county, it doesn't automatically mean we go out in the south of the county. Therefore, that there is a saving associated with that. The next stage would be to introduce 2 further weather domains. So there would be an investment up front for some more weather stations, but it would allow us to make an even more locally determined decision on whether we grit. So in reality, we could end up with a situation where one of the 5 areas we do go out to grit, but the other 4 we don't, dependent on the weather. And that is the general direction that the winter sector is going. And ultimately, the idea is to get to a route-based approach, but we are not there yet. The second part of winter, which is in the second list, is more around actually reducing the routes that we grit. But at this stage, it is just an idea, and no work has been done on looking at that piece. And we would only pick that up if there was appetite from members following the discussion.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chairman, the last thing that's been mentioned was around school crossing patrols. So again, this is in the second list. School crossing patrols are RAG rated based on something called a gap analysis, which basically measures the number of vehicles that use that route alongside the number of pupils, the width of the road, and assesses the need for a crossing to be in place. And what that proposal is suggesting, that there are a few sites based on that analysis that are classed as low risk. That I appreciate from Councillor Manning's perspective, that doesn't take into account the view of the school. That's purely based on the modelling from that data. What we're saying is that those categories that are identified as red risk, if we remove school crossing patrol, we would need to look at alternatives for making those crossing points safe, be it putting in a zebra crossing or a signalised crossing. Otherwise, what we end up doing is transferring the cost and increasing the cost onto the sort of home to school transport service provided by the council, because we will have identified a high risk area and not made any provision within highways to cater for it. So that provision will need to be picked up elsewhere. And invariably that relates to a higher cost, because it's then about transporting children to school.
I think that's most probably, I think you've covered it. Graham, do you wish to add anything, please, at this point?
Chairman, no, that's fine.
Okay. Members, bearing in mind this is the first opportunity we've had to start to look at it, so it is still what I call some way to go. It will come back to this committee in December. I've got no indications from anybody else wishing to speak. Just check. No. Okay. So therefore, I will propose that we go straight to the paper and the recommendations as laid out in A, B, and C, which are on page 31. So little time, members, do we agree to those recommendations? Got nobody putting a hand up.
Councillor Manning, Chairman, I think is asking to speak.
Oh, okay. Apologies. Councillor Manning.
Yeah, apologies, but I'd like to abstain on the basis that we've not had much time to discuss this. So,
okay, I will read out the names then and go to the vote. Okay. Councillor Batchelor.
Abstain, please, Chair.
Councillor Connor.
Agree.
Councillor Fuller.
For.
Councillor Hartford.
For.
Councillor Howell.
For.
Councillor Kavanagh.
For.
Councillor King.
For.
Councillor Manning.
abstain.
Councillor Taylor.
Abstain.
And myself in favour. Then Could I ask Democratic Services, please, to read out the result of that?
That's 7 votes in favour, Chair, and 3 abstentions. It's therefore carried.
Thank you. Thank you, member. Can we move on there to the committee service review draft capital programme, which is item 9. Trying to find it rapidly. Oh. Okay, is that who's going to introduce that, please? Is that David Purcell and Graham Hughes?
I can introduce. I say the report is kind of corporate report for the main part. So sections 1 to 4 is a corporate report, and that's going to all committees. And then section 5 relates purely to place and economy. Section 1 explains the reason for capital strategy of the council. Section 2 explains the background to development of the capital programme. So it's very much work in progress. Again, especially the potential cost of schemes affected by the virus. Section 3 talks about the revenue implications, because obviously if we borrow money, we obviously have to pay it back with debt charges, and that affects our revenue budget. And obviously any kind of new assets we get could have an ongoing revenue cost. So we do need to be aware of that. Section 4 is a summary of the capital programme for all the county council services. And in there, there's a few tables which shows the cost by year and how they're going to be funded. And then say section 5 relates to place and economy. There's not many changes from the current programme. I say the main funding for the integrated and operating network schemes comes from the local transport grant, which is now passport via the combined authority. There's a number of schemes which are supplemented by Section 106 developer contributions and also Highways England. There's one kind of outstanding decision as to how we kind of fund the A14, or like the A14 contributions we have to make as a council. We have to make £1 million contribution a year for 25 years.
Okay, Graham, do you want to add anything at this moment?
No, Chairman, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay, members, it's open now for discussion, debate. Councillor Manning, and then Councillor King.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of points of clarification or explanation. In the tables in 4.4, there's a couple of quite large jumps year to year. So the change to other funding jumps from 15 million down to -4 million. And then the minor changes and rephasing goes from 0.2 to 30, rounded up. So I wonder if we could just have some explanation for whether those particularly 2 large jumps. 5.2 probably might be for my benefit, but everyone else might know this, but what does contributions mean? I understand what borrowing means, I understand what the grant means, but what does contributions mean?
It could well be contribution to
David, hold on. Let's Simon King come in with his questions. Okay, I think Graham Hughes can answer the question about contribution. Okay, so let's. Sorry, Ian, have you finished?
Yeah, just one final one, which is I think basically been answered, but this public health grant in the tables at the end. So that's funding that we were given by public health to carry out functions. So the other county, I was just wondering if you could just explain to me, I know you get send me an email about this, but what the other county council officers means. Is it highways officers or public health officers? Okay.
Simon King, and then we'll come back between David and Graham about some of the questions. Simon, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under 5.3, it says the full list of P&E capital schemes is shown in the draft capital programme at Appendix 1. I couldn't find Appendix 1.
Okay. I think we've got a couple of questions there. The Appendix 1 is the last one. Graham, do you want to pick up the contributions? And I think it's related to the A14.
Thank you, Chairman. I think if it's okay with you, Chairman and members, if David Parcel could address the detailed financial points, including that one, and the table 4 issues raised by Councillor Manning. But I think, just for clarity, the other point that Councillor Manning raised around the public health element, if just to make sure I understand the question and so I can give you the right answer, you were asking for what is it being transferred? Is that correct, Councillor Manning, or why is it being transferred?
That's correct, and also because it says undertaken, these functions will be undertaken by other county council officers.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, I mean, there are, in the past, I mean, this relates particularly to road safety as an item, and there are other items across the county business where money has been transferred from public health. So in the past, public health, the budget has made a contribution towards our road safety activity, because clearly that's a key part of public health priorities. But it's been very much on a rolling basis. Each year, public health would decide whether, or the health committee would decide whether that was appropriate. So money has now been transferred, so it actually gives security in terms of the activity for which it relates. It shouldn't, in reality, change the work that's being led by Matt Staten's team on road safety, though. Hopefully that addresses your question, Councillor Manning. Okay. David, could I ask you to address the specific finance points raised by members?
Yeah, I think it's one of the questions related to 4.2, was it not? I'll say about the contributions. Contributions could be a number of things. So like that would include things like developer contributions. So Section 106 developer contributions in there. There could be contributions from other local authorities in there as well, and also the combined authority contributions. There was another question on table 4.2. Can I have some clarification on what the question was again?
I think, David, it was about the step down in the numbers, the significant change in numbers year on year.
Yeah, sorry, just Jed, there are two bits where you're getting quite a large jump. So for the change in other funding, it's jumping from 15 million to -4, and then the minor changes stroke rephasing goes from 0.2 to 30 million. Well, 0.147, I think it is, but.
What table was that on?
So in 4.4.
4.4.
You've got a couple of lines. So you've got the change to other funding, which is the third from the bottom.
Yep.
Between 2021, 22 and 2022, 23, it goes from 15 down to -4.
Yes.
Likewise, you've got the minor changes rephasing going from 0.2 to 31.
Right. That will be purely on this will be for all county council schemes. So this includes schools. So this is purely based on the actual phasing of schemes. So it could well be most of the work is being done in 21, 22, and it's obviously you have more information on these schemes for next financial year. Obviously, when we do the capital program, we're trying to do it on 10 years, but we obviously have a lot better information on the next year and the year after. So there probably does tend to be a lot more kind of funding shown. We're aware of any kind of grants, for example, which we're going to get in the next year or two, rather than what we're going to get in 5 years' time.
I think that can be taken away, and I can understand the question, which is why does it go from 15.6 to minus? Okay, so I understand exactly where you're coming from, and obviously this applies across the whole of the council in this particular section. So I think it's something for dare I say a few more words about explanation, David, at this point for all committees. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think you'll find Councillor King is Appendix 1. I think his question is, where is Appendix 1? It should be there.
Yeah, for me, that's page 57 of the agenda pack.
Thank you. 57. Right.
Yeah, Chair, if it helps, because I raised a similar query in a different paper. I think there are a number of appendices that aren't in the individual.
Yeah.
That are in the overall pack.
Okay. Bearing in mind, members, can I ask actually, David, with help of Graham Hughes, actually to point members about Appendix 1 or Appendix B, Section 3, etc. I think it's possibly there, Simon. It's just actually what I call democratic numbering of it is not quite up to scratch. Maybe I'm hoping that's the right answer, but I could be wrong.
I think that's fine, Mr. Chairman. I would just make the observation that we are being asked to approve this, and I think the papers need to be a bit clearer in future for us to do that with confidence. Thank you.
Yeah, can I perhaps ask David Purcell perhaps to take away that and ask you please to do something to all members of the committee in respect of making sure that we are looking at the right appendix. I mean, I can see them, the capital program, and I can see air quality, and then it moves on to the next page to Buckton and the A14 and the rights of way, etc. So I think it would be useful to clarify that for members, please, so that they are clear. I think it is all there, Simon. I think it is more what I call administration and tackling what is Appendix A or B.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Ian, you've still got your hand up. Is that to come back or what? No. Okay. Members, I've got no other speakers wishing to speak. We have a recommendation on page 49, and that's to note the overview of the capital programme and comment on the draft proposals. I'm looking to see if there's anybody wishing to put their hand up. No, I'm taking that therefore that is consensus across all of the members of the committee that we're all in favour. So that is unanimous, please. Thank you. I think then we move on to the last item, which is item 10, which is the I think it's Dan Snowden to come back to tell us about that.
The agenda plan is as published, Chair, just with a minor amendment that the Chisholm Trail project status report has been moved from November to December.
Okay, members, that's to note. Are there any questions or observations on that? Councillor King.
Mr. Chairman, I sound a bit like a broken record, but I just want to put a marker down that I would like to see either in the action plan or in the action points or in the agenda plan, something about funding for a revision of the Wisbech cycle map, please.
Okay, point taken and noted. See no other hands up there. Therefore,
Mr. Chairman, Councillor Manning has raised his hand with wanting to speak.
Okay, Councillor Manning, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Just note there's this line about the an HGV working party. I'm just sort of more of a commentary. I'm wondering if that's different from the Diamond Villages thing. So do you note Councillor Dupre's comment at the last meeting about being included in the Diamond Villages consultation group?
I can answer that, Ian. Okay. The idea of setting up the working party is for the whole county.
Right.
Okay, so it is applicable in Fenland, East Cambs, Huntingdon, South Cambs and the city. The Diamond is quite a specific geographical area, which is chaired by Steve Criswell. So this working party would cover the whole of the county, and therefore we would be looking for membership for both that and the local highways initiatives, which is on that forward plan for December.
Okay, and so thanks for that, Chair. I do still note that Councillor Dupre's request to be included in the Diamond Villages group.
That's down to Steve Criswell as the chairman. It is quite specific. He is aware of that. Okay. I have certainly brought it to his attention at the request. No other comments? No. Okay. So thank you, members. 11:20, I make it. So thank you, members. 11:20 looks better than 1 minute to 2 last time. Okay. So thank you for your indulgence, and thank you, and look forward to the next meeting that we have. Okay. Thank you very much. Leave the meeting.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Chairman.
Bye.